Go ahead, Michael.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for your flexibility today and for joining today's daily update with FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell. The purpose of today's call is to discuss FEMA's recovery efforts for Hurricanes Milton and Helene. This is Michael Hart. I'm coming to you from Region 4 Press Office, and I'll be your host today. Administrator Criswell's remarks will be on the record. She's going to begin shortly with some opening remarks, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Would you please limit your questions to one with one follow-up if necessary? Also, please state your full name and outlet before asking your question. And lastly, please wait until I have called on you before asking your question. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Administrator Criswell.
Michael, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. First, I just wanted to apologize for not being on camera today. Right now, I am still in Martin County in Port St. Lucie, Florida, where I've been assessing the impacts from Hurricane Milton and really trying to get a better determination on the overall impact and what the recovery efforts need to be done to help people recover from this hurricane. My heart goes out to all of those that have been impacted by these two storms, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And I want to continue to assure you that the Biden-Harris administration is committed to being with those that have been impacted by these events to help them step of the way as they jumpstart their recovery. I have spent the last 2 days visiting communities across Florida, assessing damage and meeting with survivors. And I see amazing things when I'm out there talking to people. I see neighbors helping neighbors, and I see communities that come together during this difficult time. And in fact, I just came back from a community event where organizations have banded together. They're serving barbecue and other hot meals to the people who have been impacted by the devastating tornadoes that were caused by Hurricane Milton. And I think, what I learned is when people think about hurricanes, when they picture the damage that a hurricane is going to cause, they think about wind and they think about floods. That's really the picture that comes to mind mostly. But Milton was a stark reminder that the threat tornadoes pose and the importance of listening to the warnings that are provided by local emergency managers and local officials are so incredibly important. Over 30 tornadoes touched down as Milton swept across the state. Tornadoes that were impacting the state even before Milton made landfall. And as we surveyed the damage today, we saw dozens of homes that were completely destroyed. Our strong partnership, though, that we have with Florida and being embedded in their state EOC allowed us to be able to take swift action and reposition people to move resources and supplies so we could be prepared to meet the needs of the survivors as soon as it's safe to do so. And I just want to take a second to be able to recognize the heroic work of all of the first responders and the rescue teams, many of which FEMA brought in from across the country before the storm. And together with Florida and all of the counties, we were ready for this catastrophic storm. And while the wind and the storm surge impacts from Milton were less than originally forecast on Florida's west coast, the tornado damage in the eastern part of the state showed that this was a statewide disaster that is going to require the entire federal family to support Florida's recovery. And so today, I just want to take a minute to break down for you exactly what we are doing to help the state and to help Floridians recover from both of these storms. So first, when we talk about the resources that people are going to need, I am committed to making sure people get the help they need and deserve to make a full recovery. In fact, I'm pleased to share that we've already flowed over $150 million to Floridians just from Hurricane Helene. Just this morning, Governor DeSantis submitted his request for an expedited major disaster declaration for Hurricane Milton, and I've directed my team to make sure that we are processing that as quickly as possible so we could open up FEMA's programs immediately. Now, I'm going to be going back to North Carolina tonight, and I look forward to seeing our progress there. But my deputy administrator, Eric Hooks, North Carolina native, has been on the ground there for the last 2 days, making sure that we are continuing to support the people of North Carolina while I've been here assessing the impacts from hurricane. So in closing, and before I take any questions, the president and the vice president have called on me to do everything that I can to help people recover and to make sure my leadership team on the ground and across the Southeast continue to do that work every single day. I had an opportunity earlier today to brief both the president and the vice president on the work that we have been doing and the progress that we are making, and received his direction to make sure we're focused all of the needs that Floridians, people across Florida need, as well as the rest of the region. And as I sit back here and I reflect on just the last 2 weeks that I have been on the ground in the field, visiting Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, back to Florida, I have seen amazing acts of heroism, but I have also seen how people can rise up above unimaginable tragedy and how communities truly come together to mend each other's hearts. I think helping people is a simple human reaction, and that's what we all should continue to do. And so with that, Michael, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thanks, Administrator. Our first question is from Luke. And as a reminder, please state your full name and your outlet before asking your question. Thanks.
Hey, Administrator Criswell, it's Luke Barr with ABC News. Two quick ones for you. It seems like from your statements, the tornadoes were seemingly the worst part of this storm. Is that your assessment? And then my second question is, what happens to FEMA as an agency, personnel, funding, et cetera, if there's another gigantic storm that comes between now and, when Congress gets back? Thank you.
Yeah, Luke, what I saw here in Port St. Lucie, as well as Martin County, is you can see really visible damage from the tornadoes. But there's a lot of damage on the western side of the state as well. Flooding that came through. I was in Punta Gorda earlier today, where they had 6 feet of storm surge, I believe, from Hurricane Helene, and a little bit more than that, Hurricane Milton. I've seen lots of debris, lots of down power lines. There were lots of vessels that were moved up from the waterways into people's yards. And so there's different types of damage that you see from both sides of the state. And so none of them are any greater than the other. I just say that the most visible part that you can see is here with the tornado damage. But so many homes are impacted across the rest of the state that experience it. And then as we look at the funding, and if we have another major storm, that's something that I am watching very closely every single day. I have a coordination call with my team daily to understand the impacts and drawdown on the disaster relief fund. I have said that I have enough funding to support these ongoing life-saving measures, but I will not have enough funding to support the ongoing recoveries that are happening across the country in our over 100 open field offices through the end of the fiscal year, definitely, and potentially not the end of the continuing resolution. So we're working on that every day to see what the drawdown is as we now start to see the impacts from Milton. And we will be coordinating with Congress and my state leadership on exactly how much we will need to make sure we can continue the critical recovery work that's happening in so many communities across the West.
Hi, ma'am. The next question is going to come from Esley Davis, but we're going to give you guys a couple of beats here to change mics and see if we can adjust your audio just a bit. So just let us know when you guys are ready. Appreciate you guys' patience.
All right, hold on one second. Michael, can you hear me?
I can, and it's pretty clear on my end.
Volume up. I just need the volume up on my end.
That's much better. Much better, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay,
great. Sounds good.
let's go over to Esley Davis.
Hello, Administrator. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yes, ma'am. This is Esley Davis with Blink News. And my question is, some viewers are telling us they're unable to apply for Hurricane Milton assistance online. As my understanding, we're waiting for President Biden to make a major disaster declaration announcement in order for them to have the option to do that online. Do we have a time frame on when this would happen? And my second question is if we'll be able to get a recording of this Zoom conversation.
So on the first question, we received the governor's request this morning for the major disaster declaration. It is working its way through the steps right now. If it's not approved by later this evening, I'm certain that we'll have that by tomorrow morning at the latest. And so that's when people can go in and register for assistance from Hurricane Milton. And I'll turn it over to Michael on the question on whether or not you can get a recording on this. And if Michael, if you don't have the answer, we'll have somebody get back to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, we will have a recording, Esley. We'll make that available. Let's go over to Laura Lee, and following Laura, Susan Barnes.
Hi, it's Laura Lee with Blue Ridge Public Radio. We're here in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's one disaster recovery center. We understand that it is either completely without internet now or very spotty internet, which, according to people on the ground, has taken the flow of people from several hundred at a time to, just a handful. I'm wondering what's being done to address that. And additionally, is there potential for deadline extension if people are unable to get the assistance in completing the paperwork they need to complete to get the benefits?
Yes, so I have been made aware of some of the connectivity issues at the Disaster Recovery Center. That is definitely something that we are moving a Starlink satellite in to help stabilize that level of connectivity. As far as an extension, we'll work through where we're at right now, and we'll see if what we watch. I think maybe the better way to say this is we watch to see how many people have registered compared to how many people we think we expected to register. And if we feel like there's a number of people that have not had an opportunity to register yet for assistance, we'll certainly have the conversation about extending that deadline.
And as a follow-up on that Starlink, is there an estimated time frame? Can people go to that center in the morning?
I don't have that with me right now, but I'll make sure that my staff follow up with what that ETA is.
Thank you.
All right, let's go over to Susan, and then after Susan, Rebecca, we'll go over to you.
Thank you. Hello, Administrator. Thank you for your time today. Susan Barnes on behalf of AARP. When you're out in the field, what have you found that older adults 55 and plus here in Florida are facing, or should they be cautious of in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton? And how is FEMA and state agencies helping this part of the state's population?
Yeah, Susan, that's a really great question. I had an opportunity to talk with the county commissioner in St. Lucie today. And the things that we talked about are the number of people that perhaps will come in and try to take advantage of individuals, regardless of age. If they come in and we want to make sure that if they come in and they say that they're a contractor and can help repair your home, but they want all their money up front, probably shouldn't do that. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And so these are the types of people that we want to ensure everybody in the communities, and especially our older community, because they seem to be subject to a lot more of that than many of the other parts of our demographics. And so she was aware. We had some conversations about some ways that we can get that word out to people so they know who to believe and who to trust. And the other thing that we talked about is many of them don't necessarily have internet, and they're not very good with internet to get on to apply for assistance. And so what we talked about is how we are going to have teams that are going to be walking through the neighborhood that can help them apply for assistance so they don't have to go online. But we also talked about how if they have the public library, and somebody there at the library can help them log in and show them what to do to register for the assistance that they need. Those are just a couple of examples of the things that I talked about with the leadership on the ground today here in St. Lucie, as well as in Martin County. And then, I'm sorry, I think you had a second question and I can't remember what it is.
Oh, no, not all. That's wonderful
Oh.
information. Thank you. And then I just was asking what you were doing, FEMA and state agencies, to help this part of the population, but you answered that as well. So thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, next question is from Rebecca Santana.
Hey, thank you so much for having this. This is Rebecca from the AP. Administrator Criswell, we've talked a lot about like when the disaster relief fund goes down to a certain point and you have to go into immediate needs funding, life-saving funding, like for life-saving measures.
Yep.
Can you kind of define what do you consider immediate needs, life-saving needs, as opposed to what are the things that are the longer term recovery?
Yeah, great question. So we have our public assistance program, which reimburses public agencies for the permanent repair of infrastructure that was damaged by a storm. But we also have our individual assistance programs that provides direct assistance to the people that have been impacted by storms. And then we can bring in under our emergency protective measures, mobilize the federal family to come in just like we did ahead of Helene and Milton to do those life-saving actions like the search and rescue teams that we mobilized, the Army Corps of Engineers to help bring generators in and put them in public buildings as needed to support critical functions of the government. And so when we talk about immediate needs funding, what we're doing is we are pausing the obligations for all of those permanent rebuilding projects that are happening across the country. So we don't pause their work on the project. We work with them to get through that, put their paperwork in for reimbursement. We get it right up to the point of obligation, but then we can't obligate it when I'm in immediate needs funding, because I want to be able to preserve enough to do those life-saving measures, direct assistance to people, mobilizing our search and rescue teams, bringing in generators to support critical facilities, et cetera. The most expensive part of the work I do is the rebuilding. So we spend the majority of our money in these permanent rebuilding and recovery projects. And so the challenge and where this becomes a real struggle is you have a small community that, let's just take in Florida for a hypothetical example, if they were still recovering from Hurricane Ian and they went to rebuild a bridge and they were waiting to get reimbursed for the work that they did to repair that bridge, I can't pay them. I can't reimburse them for the costs that they incurred until I come out of INF. And for some communities, that's a real challenge because it's a cash flow problem for them. And many of the smaller communities that have smaller budgets can't go on to their next recovery project because they're waiting for the reimbursement from some of the other ones. And these can be really large projects. And so right now I'm not in immediate needs funding. I lifted that when I got the full authority to spend against the continuing resolution. But as an example, I had $8 billion from August 7th to October 1st of projects that I put on hold, obligations on hold, and I wasn't able to reimburse them. So the first thing that I did when we came out of INF was pay those bills, pay those people back for the work that they had done while continuing to respond to Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Where I'm at right now is I need to monitor to make sure that I have enough remaining for another storm that could happen this season. And so as we continue to pay on our recovery projects, as we continue to respond to Hurricane Helene and Milton, I'm going to reach a point potentially that I'm going to have to, well, I will eventually reach there without a supplemental, that I'll have to go back into immediate needs funding. So that was a long explanation. I'm happy to clarify any point in there because this is a really important topic, and I want to make sure that everybody understands how that works.
If you were in immediate needs funding, would people get, for example, the $750 for serious needs if there was
Yes.
another hurricane?
Yes, that's why I
Okay.
want to keep that. So it's to make sure I can continue to do that. Yes, or I can continue to put them in hotels, or I can continue to give them funding for the repairs to their homes. All of that, I want to continue and have enough money to support that, because those are the basic needs that people need.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go back over to Laura. Laura, are you still connected? All right, one last call for any other questions. All right, Luke, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. One more question I did have was some of the concerning sort of threats against FEMA workers. Can you just speak about those threats and maybe where they're coming from, why you think they're coming towards FEMA workers? I mean, I talked to Peter Gaynor the other day, who said that, you know, a lot of these FEMA workers that are deployed to these communities are members of the local community. So can you just kind of talk about A, how concerning that is, and B, sort of where that's coming from, you think?
I just lost you, Luke.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Uh,
I got up to talk about the concerns for my employees.
Yeah, can you just kind of talk about the threats to FEMA workers, and also, you know, where do you think that's coming from? Why do you think that is? And sort of what are the operational impacts of those threats?
Yeah, an important subject. Again, with the unbelievable amount of misinformation that has been swirling around since the onset of Hurricane Helene, there has been a lot of negative talk towards just FEMA generally, which is creating additional narratives out there that are creating this level of anxiety about what we're doing, and then anger towards our people and our staff. And again, it's a shame that this is happening. It's a distraction for our folks to be able to do their work. And we continuously monitor the social media channels, other outlets where we're seeing this information, because we want to make sure we're providing for the safest environment for our employees, and making sure that they know that their safety is first and foremost for us as they go out into these communities. You know, as Pete talked about, we hire people from the local communities at certain points in the disaster. But many of our staff, our reservists, which are the biggest part of our workforce, they come from across the country. They leave their families and they're going into these communities to help them at their time of greatest need. And so it's just really unfortunate that I have to continue to provide a level of reassurance to our staff that the reason that we're here is because we want to do the right thing, and that we want to continue to help people at their greatest time of need, because that's why they're part of this. They're part of something bigger than themselves. And so we will continue to monitor all of the narrative that's out there to ensure my employees are safe, and that they feel like they can continue to stay engaged in these hard hit communities to help people. And that's what our focus is, making sure that we're helping people and helping them get the resources and the assistance that they need and they deserve.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for today. Thanks again so much for joining the call, and for Laura or anyone else who has any other questions. As always, you can send them to the FEMA headquarters press office at FEMA-news-desk@FEMA.dhs.gov. So this concludes today's press call. All parties are free to drop. Thank you.